You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Renee's.
Okay. Holy moly, Kara, we made it. Summer is here.
Yes, and it couldn't have come soon enough. My brain needs a break.
For real. And with all the vaccination numbers going up and cases going down, people are ready to be out and about, honey. I mean, what a difference from our world last summer, right? So crazy.
Totally. And while that's awesome news, it also can lead to all sorts of new anxieties and mental distress. Good news is there's BetterHelp.
Absolutely. BetterHelp pairs you with a licensed therapist who you connect with in a safe and private online environment. Even better, you can send your counselor a message at any time, day or night, whenever you're in need.
So many people have been using BetterHelp. They're recruiting counselors in all 50 states. It can be difficult as a mama to make time for yourself and your mental health, but it can be done with BetterHelp.
And we want to help you start living a happier life today. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/BPN.
Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/BPN. Thank you so much for tuning in to Mama's Talkin' Loud. Jess and I love bringing these stories to you, amplifying the journey of the working artist mom, supporting the struggle, and striving to change the social safety net. But we need your help. If you haven't already, we would so appreciate if you would follow, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcast. This is the way we can continue to raise awareness and change the narrative. And if you want more insight into our world, please follow us on Instagram at Mama's Talkin' Loud, on Twitter at Mama's Talkin' Pod, and on our website, www.mamastalkinloud.com.
The following episode contains sensitive content and may be upsetting for some of our listeners. Please listen with care.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Mama's Talkin' Loud. I'm Kara Cooper.
And I'm Jessica Rush. Continuing our Pride Month content, this week's guest is a production stage manager, helming shows such as SpongeBob SquarePants, Motown, and the upcoming MJ the Musical. Together with her wife, they have journeyed through foster care, adoption, an endless array of special needs, and the reality that they are white women raising Black children in an unjust society.
Her story is a lesson in leading with love, always having your heart open for what life may bring, and truly meeting your children where they are every day. Here's our episode with Julia Jones. Welcome, Julia. We are so excited to have you.
Oh, I'm excited to be here.
We loved speaking with you for Women's Day on Broadway, and Jess and I immediately were like, we need to have her on for a full episode because we want to know more.
Yeah, exactly. I was like so intrigued, and I said, it's something that neither Kara nor I knew you. Do you know what I mean? Like in this business, I feel like we know almost everybody, at least stage managers too. So it was
I kind of fly under the radar. I feel like that's part of my job.
But you have an epic resume, so it's unusual that like our paths wouldn't have crossed at some point, with the amount of stage managing that you have done in our industry. The question that we always lead with all of our guests is we first ask about your kids, because that's not something in our industry we really talk about all that much. We aren't really given the space to do so. So That's where we start. So tell us about your kids.
So I have 3 kids, Olivia, who is 17, Cooper, who is 16, and Ruby, who's 14. They're teenagers, so that's kind of the awful part, but it's also, I'm kind of learning to appreciate it. Olivia lives with bipolar disorder, and she's doing great. She has gone through more in 17 years than most of us have in 55 years. but she's come out the other side. She's a beautiful, smart, empathetic young woman, and I couldn't be more proud of her. She don't trust her to find anything in your house. She's completely a dope. She's a wonderful dope. Cooper is 16, and he lives with autism. He's on the autism spectrum, and he also has bipolar disorder and OCD. His comorbidity list goes on and on and on, but he's awesome. He's just got his first group of friends at 16, which is really, I mean, sometimes we thought it would never happen. So we're pretty excited about it. He's a rail fanner, which means he likes to go and record trains, and he likes to ride trains. And he's found a group of friends that also rail fan, and some of them are older and some of them are neurologically typical, and they sort of take care of him. And I have one of his friends is also autistic, and he has my text number. He's 30 years old. And in fact, tomorrow I'm driving to Bear Mountain, and I've been elected to be the person who grills the food. So we got a little grill, and we're going to Bear Mountain to celebrate Nick's 30th birthday party. So it's going to be me and a bunch of rail fanners.
I didn't know that term, to be honest.
I didn't either.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, it's insane. But yeah, so he's really I know one of you has a child with special needs, Kara. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's up and down, they're the most wonderful, joyous people. And then you have moments where you're like ready to pull your hair out. And he definitely gives us all of those. But he's doing well in school. He's remote because he got COVID from his in-person school, and it flipped him out. So even though he's fully vaxxed now, he's going to stay remote the rest of the year. And then my youngest, Ruby, is super funny. She's keeps to herself for the most part. She has a nice group of friends. For the last year, she's pretty much been in her room because of this damn pandemic. Has sort of scared her into her room. So we get sightings, and she comes out to feed. But for the most part, yeah, she's but she has a good group of friends, and she does well in school. They were all adopted through foster care. So they came to us from the hospital as foster children. And then when they were legally able to be adopted, we adopted.
That's amazing, Julia.
And you didn't even really tell us all that entailed, because I definitely did a deep dive on your blogs, your wife's blog, which I also found.
Okay.
So about, the intricacies and actually the things you dealt with when you adopted these babies, and how incredible it is. Jess, it looks like you want to say something.
No, well, I was just going to say, we've never talked to someone who has fostered children.
No,
we haven't talked to a parent who has fostered their children, or any children. So thank you first off, I'm just super excited because our listeners have not heard this journey to motherhood, this path to parenthood. So, so we are wanting to, like Kara said, she did a deep dive, and we want to just get into it, because I've often thought about, fostering and the emotional attachment and the roller coaster that can go along with it. Cause I do have other friends who have fostered their way to parenthood. And those moments where they call you out of nowhere and they say there's a baby, and can you, if can you let us in a little bit on what that's like? Maybe, maybe with Olivia or Cooper. I mean, it's, your first go at it, what that was like with her.
So we've had, I think we've had about 16 kids in and out of our home over the last 17 years.
Wow.
We tried to, Doreen tried to get pregnant and was unable to. I have had no interest in that. After watching my sisters bear children, I thought that's horrible and I don't have to do that. So why would I? And then we thought about private adoption, but at that point we were, broke from trying to have kids. And so we were kind of like just bringing more animals into our home. With every kid that we didn't get, we brought another animal. So we found out from a neighbor of ours about a system in New Jersey called Foster Adopt, and it puts you in touch. Now, I don't think the program exists anymore because the Department of Family Services in New Jersey has actually changed names. It's not even DIFUS anymore. But they had this program and it put you in touch with children who were sort of earmarked for adoption. Kids that, so our kids were all born polydrug addicted. Cooper was born HIV and Hep C positive.
Wow.
It was the mother had abrupted during childbirth, and those were the antibodies. But we didn't know that for the first year. They test every 6 months to see if they still are testing positive. But thank God he tested out of those two illnesses. But so back to the fostering, we went to our foster care classes when I was doing Urinetown on Broadway. And we did our foster care classes and we got our license. And before we got our license in the mail, we received a call that they needed a temporary placement for a 6-year-old. And so we took her in, and it was temporary. She was with us for a very short time. But I think right away we knew that it wasn't going to just be adoption for us, that it was going to be fostering, because this little girl who had been sexually abused by her brother, she slept in a bathing suit. There were lots of protections, and she was so little. But we were able to give her a little bit of joy. We were able to take her into the city and do little things with her and I mean little things that these kids just don't have an opportunity to have. And then 2 weeks later, we got a call about Olivia. And we went to the hospital, and she had been born 8 weeks premature. She was 5 pounds, 2 ounces, I think, when we met her. And she was just the most tiny, beautiful thing. She had withdrawn from heroin and cocaine and crack they had used morphine. So she was swaddled very tightly and her muscle tone was really tight. But you just know right away they're yours. And I think with fostering comes a lot of visits and a lot of like people coming in your house and seeing how you raise. It's almost like I think all parents should have to go through some sort of inspection
Yeah.
because it made us so aware of the needs of this little baby. Now, she had special needs that other kids wouldn't have. Um, and we did a lot of infant massage, and she became ours right away. And then when she was a year old, the way the system works, the parental rights have to be terminated, and then they have to determine that you are qualified to be adoptive parents. And that's how we came to Olivia, and we adopted her on National Adoption Day.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was neat. And then Cooper, we went and picked up Cooper from the hospital, and he was the most beat up looking little boy.
Oh.
He was 2 weeks old when we got him. And I went into the hospital first. We could only go one at a time for Cooper. And I just fell in love with that little squish face. And we got him home. We picked him up from the hospital. We brought him home. And we got a call at the same time. Doreen's better at remembering the sequence of events, but we got a call at the same time that there was another baby that needed a placement. So, and it was right before Christmas. It was 3 weeks before Christmas. And so we all of a sudden had 2 infants in our house right before Christmas, plus Olivia, who was 13 months old.
Oh my God.
For those weeks. And it was amazing. Like we just had Doreen's folks actually came, and there was we were constantly rocking kids and putting kids to bed, and
making bottles and doing laundry and changing diapers.
Exactly. Fortunately, that little girl went to her biological father. He was in the middle of the classes when she was born. So she just needed a place to be while he finished the parenting classes. And that was such a happy one because he was so thrilled, and he got her just before Christmas, and it was pretty magical. And then Ruby was a phone call and a quick trip. She was 8 days old, and we picked her up and brought her home. So
the call just came out of like nowhere. Like literally, that's how it works. They just say like you're just going about your day, and all of a sudden you get a call and they say there's a baby. Can you take it?
Yeah. So for the foster adopt, we would say we're interested in another baby, and we were interested in newborns. And when a baby is available and they need a placement, because the idea with foster care, the basis of foster care is the goal for the state is to return the children to family. That is their goal. So when you bring these kids in, it's with the goal of them returning to family. So I have a funny feeling that's why the foster adopt system phased out, because they couldn't really promise that. So we got these kids that were earmarked because all the other siblings had gone into foster care and been adopted. There were reasons, but there were reasons that all of them that they thought that they would need to have adoptive homes.
just in thinking about, you said 16 children have come in and out. I assume that
Yeah,
includes the 3 that are yours.
correct.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around, and I don't know what your wife does for a living, but how, given the work that you do as a Broadway stage manager and the erratic schedule that entails, how did you manage kids coming out and the constant like shifting of dynamic in your house, right? Going from a certain number of kids to another number of kids. And did you explain that to the children that stayed with you? Like, how did that all kind of, I don't know. I'm blown away. Can you tell?
So I would say that the most pivotal occurrence of that was when we had all of our kids. I believe Ruby was 6 years old or 7 years old, and she's the youngest. And I was doing Motown. I was in rehearsal for Motown, and Doreen called me, and I didn't answer, and I didn't answer, and I didn't answer, and we had. I was coming home to 2 additional children.
Oh,
Um, so we 18-month-old Kaylee and 5-week-old Jeremiah
oh my God.
came into our house on that day. And she finally, my friend Matt, who often I work with as a stage manager, Matt Lacey, he and I were coming home on the train. He lives in Maplewood as well. And he got a text from Doreen saying, Julia has to call me. And so I called her, and she said, listen, we have 2 kids that are here. And here I am in production for a show with 42 cast members. And it was an insanely huge process. We were opening cold on Broadway. So it wasn't going to be like just regurgitating what we had done out of town.
Well, and
And
like, and you know, the thing about a stage manager too, your hours, like our hours are erratic, but your hours are even longer. So when you're in rehearsal, you know, the actors are called 10 to 6, but you have to be there right at 9, right? To set up, or like 9:30
at
ish. And like,
least,
yeah,
at least
at
I'm
least.
there at least by 9, and I'm usually done. I mean, when you rehearse at New 42, they kick you out at 7. Blessings on that. But I'm usually home by 9 at night.
But then
So
forget about tech. I mean, you're there, you
yeah,
basically
no
don't live at
tech.
home.
Yeah, tech. You leave, and that's it.
Yeah.
But at the time, Doreen was a stay-at-home mom. So that was a change for us, because Doreen was originally an actress, and then she can do anything. She literally is like, can manage anything. She can do anything. Um,
Did I
Sometimes I
read
feel like
somewhere that she's going to become a social worker? Is that
she
I
is
feel
a
like I
social
found that on my
worker.
deep dive.
She is a social worker now. She just passed her state licensing exam and got her master's in social work,
That's amazing.
and just got a job with a organization. She'll be dealing with children and families, therapy for children and families. So yeah, so all of a sudden we were a family of 5.
Oh my God.
And I have to be honest, it was probably the best a year and a half of our lives. We found a rhythm of joy within our home, and our kids, while nothing was perfect, they have, we just all pitched in, and we Olivia was great with Kaylee, who was the 18-month-old, and she slept up in the room with the girls. We were renting a house at the time. And Jeremiah's crib was in Cooper's room. And we just became a family of 5, and that's just how we lived. And probably one of the hardest days of my life was when those kids packed up and went to a new home, which was over a year later.
Oh.
That one hurt.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of live my life where I throw my heart into things first. I do it with my work. I throw my heart into my work. And it's not always the greatest way to go. Because you can get hurt very badly. But the feeling that you have, the euphoria you have when you let your heart lead, is worth that little bit of pain later. I don't know how to describe it, but after you get over the initial pain, you've lived that time in a really positive place. And if I didn't live that way, who knows? I don't know what I'd be. But that's how I live, and that's very much how Doreen lives. She's smarter than me, so she like kind of has the foresight to know things are coming, where I don't. I just kind of get hit like a truck. But we both lead with our heart, and I think that's why we do it.
I mean, it's obvious that you do that you just say yes to these children, no matter the situation at home. I mean, I can't help but think of the struggles and the things that you have to deal with having children with special needs, and the additional support that requires, right? I have a neurotypical kid and a child on the autism spectrum. And what they require is much different. And so I'm just going to say it again. Like I'm just blown away that you just keep saying yes. That's basically, I feel like your motto. Like you said, you lead with your heart, and these children needed a place, and you knew it wasn't for forever. And you just, that it was, they were yours for that year or however long it was.
Yeah, that was a hard one, because there was a time during that where we were also filing paperwork to say we would be, we filled out the paperwork saying we would be willing to adopt. So that was a little extra, that was a little more difficult.
Yeah.
And, I'll see pictures of them, and I'll have to catch my breath a little bit. But yeah, I think it's the right thing to do. And through this, it's been very hard, because I would love to have done it. Doreen, I think, is done. She's definitely done. But I would have loved to have done it. And here I am stuck at home without work. And our home is technically too small.
We're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
There are 8 million people in New York City, and 2 of them are meeting for the first time tonight. What could possibly go wrong? That's the story of First Date, the virtual Broadway musical starring American Idol's Ace Young and Diana DeGarmo, with an irresistible score and filled with those cringe-worthy yet priceless moments that might feel a little all too familiar. First Date lets us know it's all part of the process of finding the perfect partner. Streaming exclusively on Stellar July 23rd through the 25th. Visit stellar.com for tickets.
This episode is brought to you by HP Plus. In a world full of smart devices, shouldn't your printer be smart too? It is with HP Plus. These printers know when they're running low, so you always get the ink you need delivered right when you need it. Plus, you save up to 50% on ink, so you can print whatever you want, as much as you want, anytime you want. Huh, that is pretty smart. Get 6 free months of instant ink when you choose HP Plus. Conditions apply. Visit hp.com/smart for details.
I want to touch on something that you shared with us at the Women of Broadway forum when you talked about the fact that Cooper, all of your children identify as Black, correct?
All 3 of my children are Black, yeah.
Yes, and you and Doreen are white.
Mm-hmm.
And so you spoke with regard specifically to Cooper and the fact that he is larger and he is autistic, and with the climate the way it is. And even before that, I mean, obviously we knew there has always been racism and there has always been hate crimes and there have always been issues with regard to attacks against people of color. But I think particularly after the murder of George Floyd last summer, you spoke a little bit about how it sort of came home for you in the sense of your thoughts as he gets older and goes out into the world more, and particularly like with his rail fanners, he's going out and he's not with you all the time, and what that's like for something it's sort of twofold. Like, one, just to be a mother of a child of color and 3 children of color, and your concerns and the emotions that go with that, particularly with regard to the fact that you as a white woman we will never understand what that is. We will never understand what it is to be a person of color on a base level. You can identify with regard, and these children, they're your children. And as a mother who is white, how this time has been for you, and the conversations perhaps that you and Doreen have had, or if I don't know if you've talked to Cooper about it at all, because I don't know where he's at sort of on the spectrum. That's a big, long question. I'm sorry. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do get what you're saying. I mean, I think that it started way before this time. It started way before George Floyd's murder for us, because we had to find a balance. We had to find a respect for their world that was different from ours and their world that was the same as ours. For us, what I was saying is it's respecting who they are as Black people in this country. Started way before George Floyd's murder, because when they came into our home, they were coming into a home of 2 white parents. And we needed to find a balance. We cannot raise them as Black parents would. It's just not going to happen. Like, that's not our reality. So we had to find that balance of respect, of letting them learn who they are as their individual selves, and celebrating that, whether it's their hair, whether it's their skin color, whether they don't acknowledge it at all. We had to let them take the lead on that. We couldn't, we weren't going to try to homogenize our children. We want them to be who they are, because that's what they're going to be in society. They are going to be Black men and women in society. And so they needed to celebrate that for themselves from the beginning. And that started with us respecting that, not trying to dampen that down, not trying to change that. And when Olivia was in preschool, she had this just beautiful friend who had just gorgeous brown skin. It was, light brown, beautiful eyes, just a gorgeous little girl. And it was Olivia's best friend. And Olivia is darker skinned, very beautiful. She's unfortunately beautiful. My daughter. And she was in preschool, and this little girl apparently went to her mom very upset one day because she didn't have as dark of skin as Livy. Livy had convinced her friend that she was more beautiful because her skin was darker. So I mean, that's always been kind of an amazing thing for me, that she celebrates that dark skin. She's never been ashamed of it, to my knowledge. If she has, she's never shared it. So we celebrate it. We don't try to hide it. We celebrate their hair. We celebrate their differences. But then as they've grown older, that celebration has turned into more of a reality that you're not always prepared for. And it's hard to have that conversation with them. I have had it with Cooper. I say to Cooper, and police aren't going to treat you like they treat your friends, your white friends. You're going to have to be more polite. You're going to have to not say anything back. You're going to have to, he just has to know those rules, because it only takes one time with him having a reaction that's inappropriate, which he has all the time at home. That he could end up another statistic, and he's not a statistic. He's my son. And so it's scary. It's that part of it is very scary. We have discussed our differences. Our kids clearly they know they're adopted.
I was just thinking that. I was like, clearly they see that you are white and they are black. Like, it's
yeah.
There's a visual cue there.
But we don't think about it anymore. But we've from the time they were little, they've known that. They've known that they were chosen, that they're our family. They're our family by choice. And that it's we've never hidden that. We've always said that their biological parents weren't able to take care of them. They were too sick to take care of them. Believing that addiction is an illness. It is not something that, anyone chooses. So again, I think it's honesty. We're not hurtful. We're not going to tell them hurtful things, but we do try to tell them the truth.
Yeah. I can't imagine how complicated that is on so many levels, obviously. But even just hearing you speak about telling Cooper that he has to behave a certain way, like, that is beyond the realm of possibility in my world at the moment. So, and my child is much younger.
How old?
Obviously, she's 7. She's going to be 8 in like a month.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously I don't have to worry about her being treated differently because of the color of her skin. Um, but I can't imagine having that extra pressure of not knowing if he's going to react a certain way or not. Because I live that way every day and I don't know what the reaction is going to be. So I can't imagine the extra uh, level of nerves that surrounds that for you.
Oh yeah, that's the most difficult of all, is that um, thank goodness he is generally a very polite kid, especially with strangers and with, he's very quiet and polite. He is not like that, is not who he is. He's bombastic and he's unpredictable. Um, and like I said, we never thought that he would find friends that would accept him for who he was, that weren't cultivated through us.
Right.
And in fact, his 16th birthday party, this is an example. This has all happened so fast. His 16th birthday party ended up being at a bowling alley. It was completely empty because of the pandemic. It was pretty much right after they had opened up in November. And it was 3 stage manager friends of mine who Cooper loves. It was his godfather, Matt, another stage manager friend of mine, Rolt.
I know Rolt.
Oh, okay. And Chris Manell. Rolt Smith, Chris Manell, and Matt Lacey. And that was his party. That was his birthday party. And it was amazing. We had a great time. And but now he has this group of friends. He has this group of buddies that he can celebrate with, and and one of them, this Nick, who is also on the spectrum, who turned 30, has my phone number. And on a couple of occasions when Cooper has had, because as he gets more comfortable, his responses are more himself. And there's been a couple of times where Nick has texted me worried, and like Cooper has been kicked out of the train group, and we've had to sort of have a little intervention to, and we've explained to a couple of the kids where Coop is, and they're his buddies. So it's kind of a big deal.
It's a really big deal. I mean, and it gives me a lot of hope to hear you say that. But also you just must feel such joy to see him have a space that's just his, that hasn't been created by you, that's been fostered by his wants and his needs and his desires and the things that he likes. And I mean, it must just be the best feeling.
Oddly, he needs me around a lot. So I go on more dinners and birthday parties.
Your social life has taken off, Julia.
My social life has really taken a turn.
You're going to be the griller tomorrow.
I am. Yep. We're leaving at 5 a.m. to go to Bear Mountain so they can go rail fanning. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but
take a book.
Yeah.
Rail fanning. I mean, the terms we learned.
I know. No, I just love that though. I mean, it reminded me when you were talking about it, it reminded me of the conversations we have like with Elliot now. She's almost 7, and it's learning how to have the dynamic, particularly after a year where we were her only playmates basically for the pandemic. But when they're, the neurotypical kids, we tend to have to maneuver and learn how to be in a group when we're younger, right? So now that he has this group of friends, you're having the conversations and working through the issues just a little later, just a little
Well,
later. But it's
we also do have to acknowledge that cognitively he is about an 8-year-old.
yeah.
So he's socially 16 and a half.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there is a certain comfort he has in me,
Of
Right.
course.
Totally.
which we'll see how that goes when I'm back at work.
That
But
was a perfect lead into our next question. How did you know? You were doing MJ the musical, correct? When
I
the
am.
shutdown, you are.
Well,
So
I mean, it hadn't happened yet, but
right,
yes.
but you were in pre-production, I would assume.
Yeah.
So heading back to work after the time that we've had, this giant space of time with no work, the social awakening that has happened in our country, but also specifically in our industry.
Mm.
How are you moving forward as a stage manager during this time? How has this time changed you? How do you see your next steps in this industry?
It's interesting. I just got a phone call from a fella, Brian Harlan Brooks, who I worked with on Motown. Extremely, like, a beautiful man, very smart, very. And we were talking about this a little bit. I have to go in having listened very keenly to what has been said and try to apply that to my life. The one thing that I hope changes, we are not human resources
Mm.
stage managers.
Mhm.
We're not trained that way. We and yet we're very often put in the position where we are, and company managers. I shouldn't just say stage managers, but that's what I am. So company managers and stage managers are often put in the position where we are to be human resources and we're to be social workers, and we're just not. That's not our training. Um, our training is stage managing. Our training is in a creative field where we're working with people, we're working with creative people and trying to manage shows, and in some cases very large shows. And over the years, I've heard it. I've heard many mistakes that other stage managers have made that I hear, and I'm just like appalled. Like, I can't believe that that's been said or done to an actor. Um, and then I think back and I think, God, I've done some pretty shitty things over the years because I don't know any better. So I'm hoping that we'll get a little more support from producers and general managers in the realm of, and I believe that they're doing this, where they'll maybe have some training or staff. I also don't want to become HR.
No.
I don't have that capacity. Doreen has studied for 2 years to become a master's in social work. She has the capacity to deal with those things on a much different level. I don't have that capacity. So I would like to believe that I'm going to go back in respecting what I've learned by listening to what has been said by other managers, actors, people that I respect, people of color that I respect, and what I've heard, and continue to grow as a manager and support people throughout the process, and try to be try to be more of a support than a uh, a yes and no man.
Mhm.
Try to support the process and not just be everything is either yes or no or up or down, but try to see the gray area a little bit in the middle,
Yeah.
a little more.
Yeah, it's something Beverly Jenkins said. She was on our show a while back, and because of
Talk
our
about someone who's had lots of kids.
exactly, we talked to her about all of that. But that when you're a stage manager, you have, as we have hinted at, actors are emotional beings, right? And there's a certain amount of caretaking that just comes naturally with your job.
Yeah, absolutely.
But having this concept of a human resources department for our industry has been floating around for a while. It's something that's come up when Jess and I talk about when you become pregnant and you need to leave a show. There's not the HR department that you go to and talk to about the process. It's all specific to your producers and your stage management and your company management. And none of those people are neutral in that position. You need that neutral party that doesn't have emotions invested in what's going on, that's going to treat you according to those emotions. And our entire industry could benefit from an HR department across the board, and
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
mean, I know that our company, Tina, we've had our Zooms about going back. And one of the things that is being discussed and trying to be worked out is having maybe an HR person that covers shows specific to producers. Like maybe the Dodgers have one HR person for their shows. And so that because it shouldn't go onto stage management and company management, like y'all have enough that you have to deal with. And it shouldn't be, people should be able to speak up and have things fixed and addressed without a fear of kickback or retribution, with regard to um having,
Yeah,
being scolded.
The MJ general managers and producers are pretty great. Like they're working really hard to try to affect change, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but you also have to lean in as a stage manager. No, I'm not qualified to handle all of those things, and I do make mistakes. Um, I like to believe that I'm approachable when I make those mistakes, and that someone can say, you know, that was not good,
Mhm.
right.
and this is why, and that I can absorb that information.
Right.
But I mean, you do. You're right. You do lean in. I had an actress on a show who was uh, trying to do fertility treatments, and she had to do her shots at a very specific time, and it happened to be at curtain time. And she wasn't telling anyone. There were only one other person in the company and myself that she shared it with. And so we literally had a night and where I wasn't calling the show. I had this particular person in my office um, with the other actress who was giving her the shot, and I had the stage manager hold the show
Oh my
so we could do the shot. I mean, you just end up in the most peculiar
Mhm.
positions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But at least you were, I mean, I have to say, at least you were a woman, first off, because I do feel like that would have been maybe an issue as well. Like men, that's something I found now that I'm a mother. When I have a stage manager who is also a mother or a parent, even if it's a man and he's a parent, I find that they are much more accessible and I'm able to be honest and they understand where I'm coming from when there are issues, as opposed to someone who is not. It's just what it is. you know.
Right.
So I'm glad you were a woman, and you and Doreen had also been down that road. So you had personal experience, and you knew, like, okay, well, she has to make this happen. Let's figure it out. You know, that's awesome.
Right. Yeah. Well, we actually had never done those shots.
Oh.
I had no idea what she was talking about, but no, you just have to lean in.
Yeah.
You know, you have to lean in, and I think that's the same thing with someone. You know, you have to lean in and figure out how to make things work. And that includes someone of color. If they come up to me and they say, I don't know, look, half hour isn't enough for me, and I can't also do 8 hours of rehearsal. Okay, so let's figure this out. Maybe your call is, we add 15 minutes to your call and we take that out of your rehearsal hours, and that balances that out. You have to be able to lean in, and you have to be a creative thinker. And I do think, as a parent, now that I've leaned more into I used to be really against being a parent for an actor. When I was younger, I was like, they're not children. Brr. And I still don't believe actors are children. Actors are incredibly smart. Actors are incredibly smart, creative individuals. But there's a vulnerability that we are asking you to have. And that vulnerability can almost take on a childlike quality. And I think that's where that horrible misnomer of actors being children are. Because I refuse to call an actor a child. To me, they are not only my equals, but they're the reason for the season. If we don't have these beautiful people in our lives, we are not going to have the business of show. So for me, now that I've given up that sort of, you're all adults, so grow up and do your job, and been turned more into, oh, well, parenting and leaning in and celebrating that vulnerability ultimately is going to lead to success for the show. And so I have adopted a sort of a hybrid between my younger self and being too much of a mush who gets taken advantage of at every turn.
Well, like you said, you lead with your heart in your work and in your life, right? To open yourself up to these experiences. But you have this at the head of a stage manager, which is the key, right? You're there to like figure it out. You see the pieces, they're all spread out in a different way. And you're like, how are we going to fit these all together and make this work? So I feel like you're nailing it, Julia. I feel like there should be more of you in the world. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway from this. You and your wife, incredible things that you've done.
Absolutely. And thank you. You know, it means so much that you were here to talk to us, and you're just, your heart. I could talk to you all day, Julia. It's like, we're fascinated because I know there are also things Kara found on the blog that like we haven't even touched on, which is, it's crazy the way you've made it all work.
I feel like if you were my stage manager on a show, I would just be in the office all the time, like talking to them. You know how like the actors always sit in the office talking to stage management? Like, sorry, I would be in your office all the time.
We have, I am fortunate that I work with, I'm Matt Lacey, who I mentioned, and another woman, Mary McLeod. I don't know if you know her, but
I know her from back when she was performing.
Yeah, when she was a dancer. But now she's a really awesome stage manager. But we often are a destination spot, our office, for people.
Oh, I love that. I can't wait till we can go back to our destination spots and talk to our stage managers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was such an awesome conversation. And and I can't wait to run into you like in the neighborhood. We're gonna be close. You're only like a couple blocks away from me.
That's right. That's right.
Over at the Neil Simon. So congrats on that and coming back, and things are coming, and Broadway is coming back, and also just hats off to you, Julia. Hats off to you and Doreen, and the good that you are putting out into the world. And thank you so much.
And hats off to the two of you for putting together some Pride material.
Ah, yes, we gotta celebrate all of it. I mean,
all the
celebrate
stories.
everyone.
That's what it's about. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, this is great. Like, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Mama's Talkin' Loud. Special shout outs to Rachel Spencer Hewitt for our fabulous graphic, Kristen Anderson Lopez, Bobby Lopez, and Justin Ward Weber for our awesome theme song, our producers Dori Berenstein, Alan Seals, and of course, the Broadway Podcast Network for bringing us to you.
You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.